Hi, good afternoon. I thought sustainability was a tougher one, but getting people after lunch seems far tougher than sustainability. I have an interesting topic. Are we heading the right route? I don't know whether somebody in right mind will actually admit that we are not in the right route. So let me be provocative to an extent, and so that the idea of this panel is to ask some of the elephant in the room questions, not just say everything is right and we are all green and clean. That's not the intent at all. While of course my panelists will also, they bring in very multifaceted experience, whether it's an Indian corporate or an Indian multinational or a multinational in India or an advisory business or a data business. The intent is this. We have regulations like BRSR. So did our ESG journey become better with regulations, or the other way around? Are the businesses also teaching inputs to the regulators? Or is it because simple business sense? The clients that you deal with, if you're an export house, if you're an exporter, you're dealing with exporters who are asking for better disclosures, better performance in your entire ESG journey. Are you improving there? The classic example that I always give about disclosure journey. If you look at the investors in India, the stock market investors vote for the cleanest industry till date for the last 15 years. It's been ITES. Financial services comes much later, the second one. Manufacturing is far behind. And that's because our Indian ITES companies have worked with advanced markets, regulated markets, and clients in those. So the disclosures have always been far higher than even the financial markets. So there's a reason for it. So the question is, are our business models and clients demanding better behavior? And of course, technology. We all keep talking about India as a leader in technology, as that helped in our entire ESG journey. But very importantly, it is not going to stop us from doing ESG shaming or ESG washing. Both of them continue and will probably continue for some more time. There are companies which look at ESG as a compliance tick mark. There are companies who are very altruistic and believe that their existence is about society building and nation building. So we'll have, I think, a range of both. And very importantly, the last 2 points are, is government doing enough? I mean, before the panel we were discussing, saying that what about the carrot and stick? We always seem to get the stick, but where is the carrot? What's the government doing about ESG and our compliance with it? And last is, we all seem to be speaking about those 7,000 odd listed entities. That doesn't make India. What about those large private unlisted entities, SME and MSME? So as a moderator, my job is easy. I just have to point to the right experts in this panel to answer all these queries. So with that, let's go from the format that we're going to follow is, we'll have each of the speaker, the experts share their views among this broad range of themes. And we will then come back to all of you for a round of question and answers as well. So let's start with Ram. We'll start with devil is in the data. With you.
Hey, thank you so much. So let's start by trying to understand one of the questions posed. Is regulation going to create transformation? That's the first thing that you said. Now what we need to understand collectively is regulation never creates transformation. Regulation creates transparency. Transparency creates curiosity. Curiosity propels people to ask the right questions, which then enhances the accountability of the business that is answering to the stakeholders, which will create the stepping stone for transformation. So, are we headed in the right direction? So that's the topic, right? So the first thing that we have now done, or we have seen SEBI do, is they have specified what is BRSR. They have said that within BRSR, there are core indicators and there are leadership indicators. And the KPI or disclosures need to be done on core mandatorily and leadership optionally, with a glide path on which companies have to do it in what duration of time. Now what is more interesting is not that this has been specified as a disclosure requirement. What is most interesting is SEBI has said your disclosure has to be assured by independent service providers who go and evaluate the veracity of your disclosures. So what SEBI has done is not only said that there has to be transparency, they have also said that an independent body has to certify that your disclosures are credible and not on a limited basis, which is what the Western world is trying to implement in 26-27. SEBI has said by 26-27, the top 1,000 companies have to have reasonable assurance. There is a huge difference between limited assurance and reasonable assurance. So are we headed in the right direction? Yesterday I was having a call with one of the representatives who was working with the European regulator to try and see how CSRD needs to have as a roadmap. And they said your SEBI has gone miles beyond what we think we will be able to implement in the near term. So we are already on the right path is what European regulators are now recognizing. And they are sort of sitting up in surprise and saying, we didn't expect this as what regulator will do as action in India, especially given the maturity we have seen. Again, I'm not saying that they have not worn colored lenses. They are wearing colored lenses when they make the statement. The maturity of the Indian market. So, are we on the right track for transformation? The answer is absolute yes. But the other point that our chair made is equally important. The other point our chair made is you are going to specify the disclosure roadmap through BRSR for the top 1,000 listed companies. India at the last count has more than 6 lakh private enterprises. What about them? Of those 6 lakh private enterprises, more than 3 lakh are active and disclose in ROC. Is there a roadmap? They are the pillars of the economy. What are we going to do about their sustainability? What about their disclosures? What about their ESG roadmap? So unless you really extend this to more than the listed companies, which is what BRSR and SEBI and BSE are likely to have as an ambit, it is only going to deal with a small set of the problem. The large set of the problem, if our economy engine is going to be the MSME and SMEs and the unlisted companies, we have nothing today that says that this is what the unlisted companies, SMEs and MSMEs need to do. Even if it is a large private corporate, there is nothing in terms of roadmap on their ESG disclosure or their communication on their ESG initiatives. Let me now hand it back to the chair.
Thank you, Ram. Astrid, I want to bring you in here. One of the points that Ram made is about the private and listed companies. So the challenge is all of you as experts of large corporates or advisory businesses, they're able to have experts like you. What about others who cannot have expertise as you? That's one part of it. The second part is even in your own journey, there's a huge learning curve. The cost and time of one compliance and cost and time of actually building up a new model. So share some of those challenges and issues that you have faced and how is it relatable for others?
Yeah, so in terms of your first question, when it comes to MSMEs or anyone who's having a small enterprise, we realize that they're not doing it on purpose. They really don't have those kind of resources to actually, for example, GHG emissions. So when we ask them, what are your GHG emissions, it gets very difficult for them first to understand that concept, to comprehend, and then go ahead and calculate all of that. So yes, there is that gap in resources, especially when it comes to all of these things, which then becomes a difficulty on their side to calculate and tell us all of these things. One is that, second is because they're a small organization or probably because of the bandwidth that they have, this concept is still new to them. It has started just, I think, since 2 or 3 years back. For a company like Voltas, I think we're still learning, we are still fumbling with a lot of things. So I can really imagine what must be happening on their side. What we're trying to do in small ways is help them in whatever way we can. Let it be training, let it be going onto their sites, let it be explaining why we're doing it, the concept and everything about it. So yes, there's a challenge, there is a difficulty, there are a little bit of solutions, but it's expensive and it's time consuming and there's a lot of efforts that you need to put in, right? In terms of our own journey, when it comes to reporting, I think SEBI has done a good job when it comes to the BRSR because we saw a lag from BRR to BRSR, right? There was a lag there, and kind of BRSR covered that up. So we've seen that. I think this is a good job. When we had our own internal conversations with people from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, we also realized that their intent was, as we were talking about, is transparency. Talk what is actually happening, and it's okay if you say no, that we don't have these things. But it's very important for you to talk about these things. So internally, there are things that we still have to do, for example, like a life cycle assessment that we've not done, and we are planning to do it. So then that becomes like an agenda for us. If you're asking me if there is no BRSR, would you still report? My answer would still be yes. Because we're part of the Tata group and we have internal reporting structures. And our MDs are questioned by the chair of the Tata Sons, which then becomes very important for us to have things in place. But if you're only talking about BRSR and the reporting and everything, I think that's a good journey that we've gone on. I think we're good if you're comparing us to US or Japan or to any of these big economies, I think we're doing a good job there. In terms of challenges, yes. I'm talking purely in terms of manufacturing and Voltas's perspective. Normally, we've seen that ESG teams we have a constraint with resources. So getting data, getting people aligned, talking to different stakeholders becomes a lot of a challenge. And plus there's another thing when you talk. So BRSR covers value chain and not only your own operations, which becomes a difficult task. But I think it's an opportunity for you to learn, explore, understand where you want to go, and set bigger goals internally. So that's purely my take. I hope I've answered.
Yeah, you have. But the advantage for Tata Group is it's almost altruistic by intent. So a lot of your resource being available, people being available, or let's say amenable for conversations is open. Yeah. How do you find dealing with, for example, you serve a lot of global clients in your business?
We don't really. No. We are national. So no one really questions us on a lot of these things.
And what about your vendors in terms of their disclosures and reporting or sharing data with you?
So some of them, we've kind of got them onto the table to disclose. So we've picked up the ones that are high in revenue for us. So some of them have been disclosing. Some are still facing challenges. But it's a journey. We have to take baby steps here. There are teething issues. So we'll have to go step by step. But it's a big task, to be honest. Yeah, and I think that's where we'll have consultants coming in and doing their job of helping. We would need people who manage data. So I think that's the entire value chain now for us.
So with that, let me come back to Dipankar. I mean, the advisors available, the consulting expertise available. In this entire ESG journey, the broad spectrum of clients that you serve, whether it is manufacturing or services, what are the 2-3 key challenges, apart from the mindset challenge, that you have to deal with? And two, heart of heart, how honest are actually clients? And I'm using the word honest because we do green shaming, greenwashing very similarly. We want to sound nice in the media as stakeholders. How honest are people?
Right. I think, what we have been seeing over the years is that, the ESG or sustainability performance as such has become increasingly more and more important for clients, for our clients. One is, of course, it brings in efficiency, it brings in resource conservation, it helps in optimizing the cost. And also, of course, it is a license to operate, social license to operate. But at the same time, it gives immense stakeholder confidence if you are able to demonstrate that you are performing well in terms of ESG and sustainability. And that is why this is directly linked with what we call the future proofing of the business. Now, in terms of disclosure, coming back to your question, people are doing truthfully, many companies, but at the same time, we are also seeing that increasing regulatory pressure sometimes becomes a bit detrimental. And that, if you are not really prepared, but some regulation is coming in where you have to disclose certain things where you are not ready. For instance, we just now heard about the supply chain related disclosure. I'm sure in this room, in a lot of corporates, people are there. We all know that how our Indian companies, or for that matter, why India? Anywhere in the world, the supply chain disclosure, the readiness is not at that advanced stage. So there, what will happen if such kind of pressure suddenly come? Obviously, what will happen is, people will try to assimilate some data and try to publish. And in doing so, what will increasingly happen is that, not so true disclosures might coming in. But at the same time, what is interesting is that these kind of regulations, we are seeing when we meet various kinds of companies and clients, we see two kinds of things. One is those who just want to put a tick in the box. Okay, a regulation is there, I have to meet it, so I have to put a tick in the box. But interestingly, what I'm seeing more and more today, that many organizations are taking this as an opportunity to do really something good, which is very, very encouraging. And that proportion is, I've been into this sustainability consulting for the last 30 years, but today, the kind of momentum and the business value I'm seeing people are realizing is really, really encouraging. And if that direction, I would say, we talk about whether it is going in the right direction or not. I would say these kind of regulations gives people a nudge to think in the right direction. Effect may not come immediately, but it creates that base of the effect which comes over the years. So that is what I think is the most positive side I am looking into once this type of regulations come.
So I also see more conversations happen around sustainability.
Sorry?
More conversations, are they happening around sustainability?
Yes. In fact, when we are talking about conversation, earlier this type of conversations used to be happening with, say, for example, the person who is responsible for environment or the sustainability in the organization. And now increasingly, I'm seeing these conversations are happening with CEOs, with CFOs. And at the same time, the board is also really, asking those right kind of questions, and I'm increasingly seeing that companies are wanting even, capacity building of the board. These type of things were absent 5 years back.
Got it. So in that sense, let's say we have to give little credit to our regulatory development for bringing some of these conversations happen at the board level. Otherwise, it was seen as somebody will do this job, not mine.
Right. Very true.
So now let me come to Sridhar. All these conversations about sustainability need financing. All these conversations about business model rejects need money. So talk to us about where do you see this entire aspect of financing in India is happening, and what are the challenges? I mean, let's be realistic about the challenges. It won't happen overnight, transformation.
So interesting, and so I'm an eternal optimist. So and I believe in the quote that the first step, towards getting somewhere is to ensure that you're not at the same place. So so you need to move forward. Now, whether we're in the right direction, whether we're moving at the pace that is so desired, is all a matter of discussion, and it's very subjective. But at least we've begun the journey and the evolution. And they always also say that in God we believe, but in data we trust. So when you ask them the question about whether discussions are taking place, and more boardroom discussions are taking place. But at the same time, as Astrid mentioned, in terms of supply chain, etc., the readiness of the partners, etc., are not there. So those are challenges that are there. In terms of financing, I sincerely feel that it depends on what your purpose is. As a group which is a conglomerate, which Astrid is also a part of, more than 150 years. So for example, our purpose is to be a responsible financial partner, fulfilling India's aspirations. So when you look at nation building, when you look at the country at large, and also talking about responsibility, which means the lending that you do. So we can always take shelter in saying that I'm a finance company, and therefore I do not have to worry about emissions, etc., like a manufacturing or any other company. But that doesn't prevent us from doing what is good for the society or planet. And so therefore, lending responsibly is the key, and financing is key. So we have the advantage of a green finance company, a renewable energy company called Tata Cleantech Capital, which is in partnership with IFC, and we've had a lot of IFC performance standards, a lot of good practices from IFC that's applicable to us, and we've learned a lot from that journey. Which means now what? So on one hand you have renewable energy or infrastructure finance lending. Now you're getting into a corporate book. So what you don't do here, can you do it here? Of course, yes. But then as a responsible company, should you do it? The question that comes here. But then on the other hand, there's a growth story. You need to help fund not only your large corporates, but also SMEs, MSMEs, because the wheel has to continue. And that's where the responsible financing comes into aspect. So there is a strict standards. There are strict standards that we have. But also at the same time, we give them time to ensure that they meet the objectives of not only us, but the larger banking industry, the financial services. It's very important, to say that, okay, for example, if you're in an industry, I'm just giving an example, if you're in an industry which is polluting at the moment, can they do it overnight? Not possible. But yes, do they have a plan for the next 3 to 5 years to slowly start the journey? We look at that aspect. And it's important for us, as I said, to keep supporting. We also have our internal challenges as a financing company. What is the challenge? For example, if we decide that we will not do those companies which are, say, harming the environment, then your book also will have the challenge in terms of growth, in terms of profitability, etc. So as a responsible financial partner, then we do take a call as to what we should do and what we should not. And I think that's where you look at the larger perspective rather than only profitability or the book growth, etc. You look at the country's interest at large, and that's where we stand for. But yes, financing will become a challenge in the next few years, but it's also an advantage. So there are two sides. There's also an advantage for those industries which actually have standards which are high and which also help in terms of lesser emissions, etc. that are there. So there are two sides of the coin on that.
So another question is, in the entire net zero narrative that India has set itself, a group like Tata's are far more aggressive and ambitious in the net zero target. A lot of it is actually dependent on the monies available. I mean, corporates cannot transform and move from, let's say, brown assets to green assets overnight. Even if they have the wherewithal, they need the money. So where is that larger narrative? Where will India find its money? Because Tata Capital is far more altruistic and very, very serious player in this. But if you look at money, everybody wants profits, everybody wants return off capital than return on capital. So we are at a stage where money is kind of chasing, so you can't have short-term profit making in the conversion green projects.
So that, as you rightly mentioned, we'll have to be a little bit patient. So it's a combination of several factors, including your culture, including, your purpose and the intent. So let me assure you, money is not is not the key challenge. The challenge is in terms of what you would like to do, the intent that is there, because money flows. So for example, if you're talking about the green finance that is available today, I don't think that's a challenge at all at the moment. Unlike a product where you sell and you get your money, the challenge in terms of money is also to recover. So the projects, it's not that the projects are not there. The projects are there. It's also about the entire viability of, and that's where the stress testing, etc. comes on climate risk, which is key. Patience is absolutely critical. And so when we look at a larger purpose, when you say that, okay, this particular partner has the intent, you'll have to be a little bit patient. I mean, there are various aspects that we've seen over the number of years that we're there. It's important that you don't look at very in a short-sighted way. I mean, don't look at it very myopic. Look at it at a larger, have a greater vision. See that the changes take place. I always keep saying, whenever I'm just giving an offbeat example. We will have a lot of beach cleaning exercises done. The question is, why do we even need to throw trash to have the beach cleaning? Similarly, here is, if an organization is on its journey, we can help speeding up the process. But rather than say, no, we will not support it, then we will never meet the end objective. So whether it's 2070, whether it's 2045, whether it's 2030, which I saw in AV before, I think at least they're looking towards. Now, whether you do it in 2030 or 2040, I think that's the second step. But at least you have, polls that you have set and you have goal posts that are there for you to measure. So that's the...
Thank you. So Smitha, I want to bring you in as a multinational in India for a long time, and the distinction of one of the few global subsidiaries actually being listed. Yeah. So I have two questions. If 3M India were not listed, would you still be doing what you're doing in terms of sustainability? That's question one. Two, if you compare your own, let's say, counterparts in other markets, how advanced or how behind are we in the entire sustainability?
So to answer your first question, 3M has always been a leader, whether it's in India or globally, it's always been a leader in terms of doing the right thing. So we're known for being ethical. We've had sustainable practices, at least from a manufacturing standpoint, since 1975. A very simple employee-led initiative called Pollution Prevention Pays was basically looking at reducing waste, reducing pollution from your manufacturing processes. So the origins are there. And I think what really is strong about 3M is the culture that pervades across subsidiaries, is those global practices are uniform and consistent across. So even if BRSR wasn't there, we continue to, India has always had, you could say, a disclosure reporting environment, in at least in the last 10, 15 years, with CSR being one, looking at social. We've had EPR, regulations and guidelines coming in, the PAT scheme. There have been many, they continue to exist. A lot of these where, we've been, regularly reporting. What BRSR probably does is, sort of cohesively allow to create, allow the company to create a cohesive narrative to really communicate, the various initiatives across environment, social, and governance. And to your second point about, the how advanced or how do we compare? So it's always nice to, I remember during our conversation outside, saying sustainability itself, we've always been reuse, reduce, recycle. That was the culture in India. So we've been trendsetters from that perspective. So if you look at just BRSR, and the quick evolution, to core, to the third-party assurance, all of these are so forward. So we have our parent company saying, you need to teach us, people in Europe writing and saying, please give me a one-slide snapshot of what the BRSR core is about, because it helps us also learn from India. So that way, in Asia, Japan and India are the countries that have mandatory requirements to communicate, but we are being seen as, creating that awareness for, the parent company. And, I think I also want to add something around, how all of this creates the transformation within the organization. So for reporting, before, it would always be pockets, so you had your EHS environment data was always, the custodian of that data would be the EHS team. Then, of course, the people related was all HR. And I think what with this whole, what we've tried to do is my role as, my background is communications and strategy, and that sort of brings all these stakeholders together, engagement of stakeholders across, working with cross-functional teams and really drive collaboration within the organization. So which means it involves simple things like not just at a board level or a leadership team level, but have an ESG council, so to speak, with people who are actually reporting data. Because often what happens is, you provide data, but you don't see the big picture. And I think bringing these people who are, doing the data entry, helping them see the big picture, and that's really a communications job or, a strategy job, helping to sort of align teams with the overall strategy. The other initiative that I can, talk about is, every job is a sustainability job. So really it's about rewriting some of the job profiles to, whether it's marketing, whether it's, sourcing, even R&D leaders, how do we look at those roles from a sustainability lens? And, these are, and this is inspired from Project Drawdown, which really looks at how every job is a climate job. And I think these are some of the transformations organizations are seeing to really be part of the reporting and the sustainability journey. And ultimately, the whole thing is a journey. And just like how CSR has had, so many years for it to reach some level, we're going to see the same thing with ESG as well.
Thanks, Smitha. So let me, before we open it for the audience questions, let me go back one round of a quick 30-second wish list from each of you. If there were one single additional regulation, feature, law, or development, what would you want it to be? Dipankar, we'll start with you.
I think what is important is that we need to have our cost of borrowing reduced. We have as a country, we have got a natural unfair disadvantage that our cost of borrowing is always very high compared to the developed nation. And if you actually implement ESG or internalize ESG or sustainability, obviously the return of investment has to be a little less. So unless and until cost of borrowing comes down, it will be very difficult and the unfair disadvantage for us to internalize ESG.
I think the key differentiator that's going to be there is companies which will march ahead in the next decade will be those companies which are consistently looking to raise the bar, not looking at mere compliance. Many of them are trying to be compliant now. I think raising expectations is going to create value, and which will ensure that stakeholder expectations also met for them.
I think the part that I'd like to talk about is how we have to build ecosystems for this whole journey, and companies have we have that ability to create that ecosystem. So taking our partners along, I think if SEBI can sort of give guidelines on how do we really take them along, because otherwise it's like you have one end, you have the hammer coming from one end which is being passed on, and then it's not really the way we should be marching towards our net zero journey. Yeah,
I think equal guidelines for all, I think that's really important, because you're saying just listed companies, and again BRSR, if you see, it's more or less towards the manufacturing sector. There are a lot of service industries that so what about them? So I think if you have guidelines throughout for whoever is there in your value chain, that helps, rather than just targeting one set of people. So I'm just wishing or hoping that happens, that change happens. And yeah, I think it's a good journey to be on. It's always good to do good, right? So I'm hoping for something like that to happen.
So Ram, before you go on data, doing good and being good, why is it so difficult?
So is that my question, or is it wish list my question?
It's a wish list question, not a personal one.
Okay. So if you ask me what is the wish list, the value chain. Why is doing good, I'll come to later. So the SEBI has taken the first step. If RBI takes the next step, then this value chain issue will automatically disappear. The financing cost will automatically come down. So if you ask me what is my next item on the wish list, it is RBI to try and increase the banking system portfolio financed emission disclosure, which will then mean that all people who use the banking system, specifically if they borrow from the banking system, have to disclose to the banks they borrow to, which will create the value chain transparency that has come up so often. And also, if they are performing well in terms of their own disclosures to the banks, we can look at more competitive interest rates and so on, which creates an incentive system to increase compliance. Now, why is it difficult to do good and be good? The answer is doing good and being good so far has not been linked to profitability. The moment it somewhere translates into the bottom line in whatever manner, or at least there is a proxy. For example, carbon pricing, I don't know how many of you are familiar, but today it is not included in the way ROI is measured or it is reported. The moment these things come in, then automatically if you put a benefit of being good in some manner, then automatically there is a further it serves as a catalyst to being good, and people naturally want to be good and do good. And that is why, if you ask me, that is one change that we should advocate. Again, probably RBI or SEBI or even the Ministry of Corporate Affairs.
Thank you. So now we'll have the audience questions. Can we have a mic around?
Hello, my name is Vishal Sanghvi, and I'm an innovator and researcher into the sustainable economy using the new technology of IoT, nanotech, and there are many startups actually. They started to develop many new technology, which is really part of the ESG and using corporate. My question is about, I have two questions. One is a small question, whether the BSE has the protocol to when company going on list, they should measure about what they do in the area of ESG actually. So they can start the company, because I want to become an economist, then only I can create ecosystem. So my question about this, I have to know. The second thing, whether, there are many companies, I want to become I also incubate many startups within my company, which is follow the sustainable. So UAE government already follow their government, 40,000 companies, they have to follow the ESG standard. So what is your advice, whether Indian companies, startup or other companies, they have to, start producing their practicing, merge with the concerning big companies, or else they can go for the overseas opportunity actually, and they something create the success story over there, and then come India actually, so that's, I want to know.
Dipankar, do you want to take I think, the thing is for startups as of now, it is completely... No, mic is not. Mic is not correct. Yeah, for the startup ecosystem today, the ESG, as of now, obviously, as we know, there is nothing mandatory, but at least, the value, once they start understanding, obviously certain ESG practices obviously will have to be followed, and that will be eventually helping them to get, investment to scale it up and things like that. So that is where it is standing now. But exactly anything else you wanted to really...
So the other one was about entities starting an entity which is in a friendly zone and then bringing them to India. Like, for example, Dubai is actually promoting startups and sustainability. Yeah. Do you actually incubate a business there and then bring them to India? Or would you advise doing it in India?
That's of course depends on the context and what kind of business they are incubating. I don't think there can be a clear-cut yes or no answer to this, I guess.
Thank you so much. Very interesting panel indeed. And really like the suggestion on, the RBI, reducing interest rate. I think what you mentioned, Ramnath, and also Dipankar, and I think that's a very good suggestion. My question is, you see, at a country level, the priorities that we have and the way, let us say, the BRSR and the SEBI guidance and so on and so forth, the way they've developed along the lines of GRI and, the standards that be. Where is the convergence that you think that, the RBI governor would say, well, it has a direct linkage with the priorities of the country. So we have SDGs and so many other indicators. So from a country perspective, creation of jobs, okay, then circular economy and various other priorities. Where do you see this convergence? Honestly speaking, when I read some of these reports, and I've been in this field, with Dipankar and many others as professionals for a while, I really don't see any synergy with how the country is growing and how, the reporting process is growing. Maybe I'm missing something, but I would like this very erudite panel to suggest, is there a convergence between the growth of the country, hence the interest rates can come down and be competitive?
You want me to take that? Sir, first point is the priorities that you're talking about as a country. We have to step back and understand that our country was fundamentally sustainable. Okay, so if I go back to my childhood, we never used to get milk in plastic bags. We used to get it in bottles, which had to be sent back, and then those bottles would be recycled and the milk given back to you. So, is there any change in the business approach by putting it in plastic? Or would it have been as sustainable if we had used glass bottles? The answer is the profitability wouldn't have changed. So the request is not to compromise the country's priorities. The request is only to do it in a way that the sustainability becomes ingrained to the business practices. Are they conflicting? It has been proven time and again that sustainability does not need to conflict with business practices or bottom line. I can give number of examples. All of us are very glamored with Tesla. We know what happened, right? Tailpipe emissions, they took a simple problem. They said, I mean, it's not a simple problem. Let's assume it is a simple problem. And they said, we'll fix the tailpipe emissions. And today it has become the most valuable automobile maker. So the fact is, if you are able to solve sustainability problems creatively, it gives you an alpha in terms of business opportunities, which others are not able to see, monetize, and hence it sets you apart. So if you ask me fundamentally, does incorporating sustainability militate against the country's goals? The answer is no. Does it give you the glamour in the stock market? The answer is yes. Now, the other way of looking at your question can be, are we being over-ambitious? As a country where we have so many people who are marginalized, financial inclusion is still an issue, we still have child labor to grapple with. Are we going to solve the world's problem by stopping to burn coal? So these are good questions to ask. So does it mean that if we stop burning coal, the society will not remain marginalized? The answer is, we have to subject ourselves to creativity. I don't know if you've heard of the story of the man on the moon. When Sputnik was launched, the entire country called America dedicated itself to one mission, saying, let's put the man on the moon. And then they led the space race, they created rockets and everything in terms of science and technology evolved. So the question is the same thing. Do we dedicate ourselves to a cause saying that, yes, this is a real issue, our grandchildren are not going to have a livable planet? And do we reorient our business to say some ambitious goal like, let's hit net zero? The answer is yes. And can we do it profitability? Again, it has been proven it can be done profitability. So in my mind, they are not dissonant concepts. You can still have financial inclusion, you can still include the marginalized, you can still create jobs and do all of it sustainably.
So I think it's a very interesting question, and he spoke more on the S part, and it's very, very valid, very pertinent to say. On one hand, you have poverty, unemployment, etc. On the other hand, you're talking about sustainability. But as you rightly mentioned, there is a confluence somewhere. For example, if you're talking about me as a lender, and you're talking about capital to get into an industry, we would always look at aspects which have the opportunity to create employability, which has the opportunity to create employment, which has the opportunity to grow at a pace which the country so desires. So there is a confluence of there. If you're saying, will it wipe away in one brush the entire challenges? No, it will not. But it will take some time. But mark my words, over the next 5 years, you will see the change in the way lending is done by banks especially, or the financial service industry, to sustainable products. But you will see that in the housing industry, you will see it in the other industries too, slowly how it differentiates from what you see today in the next 5 years. And you will see the change, especially us being more responsible towards the environment and the industry at large.
Thank you. Thank you for being a wonderful audience, and thank you to my panelists for being very gracious with your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.